History has been made, folks. 12 straight victories for your St. Louis Blues in 58 seasons of Blues hockey. No team has ever accomplished what St. Louis did here tonight at the Enterprise Center as they defeat the Colorado Avalanche by a final score of 5-4, winning their, 12th straight game. This is the Blues Hub Postgame Show. I'm your host, Ethan Hannaford, joined tonight by Thomas Welch. Take a good long look at those wavy, luscious locks. They won't be here much longer. We're going to get to all of it here in just a moment. Plenty to break down from a historic night for the Blues. We will get to all of it here in just a moment. A reminder, though, that the Blues Hub post-game show is sponsored by Hot Shots here on Sports Hub STL, which is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Thomas, holy cow, unbelievable. I got to just get your immediate thoughts, your immediate reaction to start off.
My immediate reaction is never in a, hold on, I got to walk this off for a second, but never in a million years would I have dreamed that this team was capable of making history in any regard, right? Like, we weren't thinking playoffs. We weren't thinking Stanley Cup. And now in the span of just a few short weeks or like a month's time, all this whole stretch against Four Nations has completely turned my mindset around. I'm wearing the We Want the Cup shirt. I got the Stanley Cup in the background. Like, I'm all in. I'm ready to get hurt again. I've got my hope all the way up on this team. We're literally watching history happen, unfold in front of us. Colton Parayko goes down, doesn't matter. Dylan Holloway goes down, doesn't matter. Jimmy Snuggerud gets minutes. We're like, oh, he's just a young guy. He's going to take some bumps. Dude gets a nasty assist on the night, still looking for his first goal in his NHL career, but I had a couple chances at that tonight too. So it's what we talk about, right? You're firing on all cylinders. Everybody's bought in. The Blues are blocking shots left and right. They're taking it to teams like the Colorado Avalanche, who I didn't think we were anywhere close to being on the same level on. They're years ahead of the rebuild, all because of Doug Armstrong's magician work with the offer sheets. I mean, it's roses and rainbows right now, Ethan. Like, what can you say? Like, there's nothing to be mad about. It would have been nice to win 4-0 instead of 5-4. And the Blues just always have to make it entertaining. It's happened throughout the stretch of this season, and it's culminated itself in the degree of this game tonight. But 12 wins in a row, first time in franchise history. Absolute electric factory right now. And if you're not tuning into Blues games, you're missing out on a roller coaster.
That's a good way to sum it up. I think you summed it up perfectly in your one word that you started off the stream with: history. History happening tonight. 12 straight wins, and we want to hear your thoughts, your reaction, because we know that there's a lot of it. We know there's lots of thoughts and reaction tonight after what was one heck of a game. And as you mentioned, yes, could it have been a 4-0 final? The way that things were going, did I expect it to end up being as close as it was? No, but am I surprised? No. So we want to hear some of your guys' thoughts as well. Leah throwing out that she might have to play Gloria. Hey, we're feeling it, Leah. We're all feeling the 2019 fever right now. I had to throw on the Cup Champs hat. As you see there, Thomas, clearly he's got his fever. Lord Stanley over there making an appearance in the background.
Looks beautiful.
This team, what they have been able to do before we really dive into the nitty-gritty behind how they were able to pull off tonight's win, Thomas, the fight, the heart that they are showing. They're not the most talented team. They're not the best. When you look at solely from a talent standpoint, they are not the best team in the NHL. But it's the way that they played tonight, I think, that encapsulates perfectly what this St. Louis Blues team is. They are going to fight. They are going to sacrifice their bodies. They are going to have very good, solid goaltending, and they're going to outskate you. And that's what they did tonight. This is the first time, I think, since the Four Nations break that we really saw a team overwhelm St. Louis at times with their shooting ability. I think 38 shots is what it was the last I looked at. I'm not sure if that's where it finished, but right around there for shots tonight for Colorado. We haven't really seen even a team do that to St. Louis here in, a month now? So, but regardless, St. Louis, very efficient, very complimentary hockey tonight that ends up leading to a big win for the Blues. And like I said, I think that this win encapsulates what this Blues team is on the whole, Thomas?
I think there's two schools of thought for me that kind of are prominent from this game specifically. And that is this dialogue of what's been successful for the Blues, not just in this season, but since 2019 and really since they started. You kind of understand that like free agent players aren't going to come to St. Louis as a destination city. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go to coastal cities or go where they're not going to be taxed on their contract, or, in the event that the Blues are Stanley Cup contenders, like obviously we have more pull there, but it's not a destination location by any means. So for the St. Louis Blues, your ideology is centered around that in the depth construction, like you mentioned, in the draft, like you're never going to tank and try to be like a top 5 pick consistently. Doug Armstrong doesn't want to do that. It's not a solid system for success for this team. So the Blues make their bread and butter by hitting in that late first round pick range, right? And so we have all these teams built for success, rolling 4 lines, board play, forechecking, back checking, blocking shots, right? And that's the key to success for any Blues team that makes it far in the playoffs and any Blues team that's going to win a Stanley Cup. We're seeing that evident in this team right now in all facets, right? They're just checking all of the boxes, right? But one thing I think that is different about this team that we haven't really seen in a long time, and you can make the argument about Tarasenko, but really when it comes to, the upper echelon of superstars in the NHL, I'm not really sure he kind of fits that same mold that we're talking about here. The way that Robert Thomas is playing hockey right now is unlike anything that we've seen in recent memory. I mean, he is, by all accounts, in the conversation, if not the single best player in the NHL since the Four Nations break. Like, couple of assists on the night, gets the empty netter at the end of the game. Like, he is just oozing greatness at a very young age and still, short in his development term. Like, he's not reached his full potential, is not in his complete prime yet. So, I mean, we keep talking about it on every podcast, on every post-game show, but the future is looking bright for this St. Louis Blues team, not just the near future in terms of a playoff run, in terms of a Stanley Cup, but in the next 5-year span too. And I think Robert Thomas is a massive part of that because we haven't had a superstar kind of rear his head to the level that he is right now in a long time. And like I said, you can make the argument for Tarasenko, but I don't even think he's at that level. And what Robert Thomas is capable of when the puck is on his stick, when the puck is off his stick, in leadership terms, the world is your oyster if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, and it is an electric factory right now to watch.
According to Jeremy Rutherford, since February 1st, looking at the NHL point leaders prior to tonight's games, Robert Thomas had a 2-point edge in the league lead over Nikita Kucherov with 39 points. He tacks on 4 tonight. And obviously I'm not sure if Tampa Bay is playing tonight, but it just goes to show how effective he has been. I mean, it's easy to say, yes, he has been one of the best players in the NHL since the Four Nation break. The numbers back it up. They entirely back it up. But if you watch the games too, and how he controls everything that happens when he's on the ice in the offensive zone, everything, especially when they're on the power play. We saw that tonight. And what has impressed me the most here these last couple of games is his patience, and he is getting the respect that he deserves from the defense. There's not a lot of pressing that goes on specifically on the power play, but really when he has the puck, because they know that one false move and he is going to make them regret it. And we saw that multiple times tonight. His patience with the puck is unbelievably impressive. And Hulk Hogan's t-shirt says it perfectly. Old Bobby Thomas is on fire. Let's go ahead and let's walk through this game. Things got started off very quickly in this one, Thomas, when the Blues went on the power play, 30 seconds into the game, and Zach Bolduc put St. Louis up 1-0. Robert Thomas, his first assist of the night. Cam Fowler gets the secondary assist. I want to hear what your thoughts were on the Blues' fast start in this one compared to the last couple of games where the first period had been a little bit of a liability. It felt like we hadn't been seeing that fast start that St. Louis had been accustomed to since the Four Nations break. That certainly wasn't the case tonight.
Yeah, I think a lot has been said over the course of their tenure here about the connection and the chemistry and kind of the embedded partnership that exists between Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. That kind of stems from their World Juniors and being Canadian and kind of, going up in the development together and then coming to the NHL at the same time, getting the same contract, all those things, right? They've been kind of brotherly paired throughout their careers for a long time, and success on the power play has kind of come with that. But I think we're seeing the makings of a same kind of chemistry, maybe not the same level initially right now, but the connection on a hockey IQ level. And I think the perfect way to describe Robert Thomas in that regards is cerebral. And it's easy to kind of make that connection with him. But it's obvious that Zachary Bolduc is playing, at extreme levels right now for a guy his age. And I think hockey IQ plays a huge part of that. So Robert Thomas and Zachary Bolduc seeing the ice in similar ways, specifically on the power play, is just going to spell success for this team to another degree. Like I said, it's easy to hone in and just say nothing but nice things about this team right now. But how can you not get excited when you see Robert Thomas setting up Zachary Bolduc consistently multiple times throughout the game? Zachary Bolduc easily could have had his first NHL hat trick tonight if he buried all of his chances. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to shoot 100% on every night, but even him getting those chances and creating those chances spell success for him moving forward. So that was a great way to start off the game and a great way to, get the pendulum swinging in the right direction. The Blues have kind of struggled as of late on the power play, gripping the sticks a little bit tight. They've got two solid power play units, but they are kind of, switching guys around and seeing what works and, pivoting when things don't work. So, but it does look like this Robert Thomas and Bolduc connection, especially Bolduc in the middle there. If you can find him and rip that 1T from a prime location, 9 times out of 10, he's going to find the back of the net, which he did 50 seconds into the game. So that's a hot start for the boys, like you said.
The second goal wasn't technically a power play, but it almost worked in that way when I think that the Blues got away with a high stick on Devon Taves. So he was kind of out of the play that led to that second goal, and Jake Neighbors took advantage of that while doing what he does best, right in front of the net, right in front of the goal crease, and he ends up putting in the second goal of the night for St. Louis. So the Blues able to take advantage a little bit in that next opportunity that leads to the doubling of the lead. But I think that when you look at it, didn't end up having, I guess, an impact at the end of the day. But I think that what we saw early on in this game, following the couple of goals, was the Blues kind of lose a little bit of the momentum that they had because the play got a little bit sloppy in the sense of they had committed 3 penalties in the last 12 minutes, 13 minutes of the first period. It kind of halted that momentum that they had gained up to that point. Now, I will say this is when we knew that Jordan Binnington was on his game because the Avalanche had some great opportunities early in the first period, or should I say early in the game during the first period. And the fact that despite the mistakes that the guys in front of him had made, getting themselves put in the penalty box, Jordan Binnington showed that he was on early in this one, being able to keep St. Louis with a 2-0 lead going into the first intermission.
Yeah, and ideally, in a perfect world, you're not giving up all of these power play opportunities to Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, and that studded offense on the other side. That's probably not going to spell success for you in the playoffs against the team that's loaded as they are. But to their credit, the Blues, like we said, even last game, it felt like, at times they were kind of hemmed in their own zone and, outplayed sometimes. The fact that they still come away with the victory, I think, speaks to the magnitude that they're capable of overcoming adversity. But like you mentioned, Jake Neighbors finding the goal sheet, just a great night for him, especially when Jim Montgomery kind of put faith in him with Dylan Holloway's absence, going on injury. They said he's week to week. The news on him isn't as promising as they would have liked to hear about his injury, but hopefully he comes back soon. But in the meantime, that means more minutes for Jake Neighbors. So for him to find the back of the net so early in that endeavor, I think is just another testament to the St. Louis Blues and their next men up mentality.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Obviously, Dylan Holloway being out or being considered week to week right now, is going to that's gonna be a blow. But it didn't seem like the Blues missed a beat tonight without him. What does that say? You know, I know you just mentioned the next man up mentality. You hear a lot of teams say that, but it's a whole different story to walk the walk rather than just talk the talk. What does it say about the Blues? Arguably their hottest player in Dylan Holloway, for him to go down, be considered week to week, and for St. Louis to play like they did against one of the other hottest teams in the league. What does that say about the way that Jim Montgomery has this team playing right now?
I think the biggest thing is that they have confidence in each other, right? Like it's easy, like you said, for a team to kind of talk the talk and be like, oh yeah, it's next man up mentality. We'll just slot like, you know, insert name here. And then he actually gets in the game and his teammates are like, I don't know if I'm going to pass this guy, you know, the puck because I haven't seen him play in a while. Like maybe he's rusty. Maybe he's fumbling pucks a little bit to start off, or he's nervous, you know, all those things. But the Blues have kind of cycled guys in and out of the lineup so consistently. And they have this identity and this mindset that anyone that they slot in, including Jimmy Snuggerud, is capable of producing at any point in time. We saw a beautiful assist from him on the Buchnevich goal, and Buchnevich is immediately pointing to him, giving him like, you know, so much credit, telling him he's doing a fantastic job. And then afterward, the broadcast was also showing Buchnevich like during faceoffs, kind of giving him pointers, you know, taking him under his wing. Like the good thing about having a team that's playing off of depth and not having a superstar is you're not having three lines depending on one line to just be like, okay, we're going to throw you on the ice. Like, go fix everything for us, you know? And it's like, that kind of resonates throughout the team. It's like, they're not just relying on one guy or one line. They're relying on everybody. So even a guy like Pavel Buchnevich, who finds the back of the net consistently, will go to Jimmy Snuggerud and be like, hey, I need you to perform right now and go get your first NHL goal, because we need some safety goals against this Colorado Avalanche team that has just been humming in the NHL this season. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go do it. And then, you know, he's going to try, but he had a fantastic game. And he's continuing to learn. And I think that's going to help the absence of Dylan Holloway as well, is Jimmy Snuggerud's presence. Yeah. And as he develops, because we know from experience that Doug Armstrong's feels like his number one talent that he's looking for in his draft picks is always hockey IQ and how smart they are. So, you know, obviously you can say we want to give Jimmy Snuggerud time, and we do know that he's going to take time, but I do believe that timeline is going to be quicker than maybe some other prospects in that draft class, because Doug Armstrong puts such an emphasis on that hockey IQ.
I think Dustin summarized it perfectly here with this comment below, that how you kind of explained it there, just how deep this team is, and it's showing right now with the impact that Jimmy Snuggerud is having on this Blues team right now, which is I think is shown just how impressive this stretch has been, and it's encapsulated perfectly with Jimmy Snuggerud stepping in, a guy that has played quite literally 3 games in the National Hockey League and is already being as big of an impactful piece as he is. I mean, how incredible is that? So, you know, as we move on here, 2-0 after the first period, and then we have to go back to Zach Bolduc one more time, because, or I guess it was technically he had the 4th goal of the night. Well, so we'll start with the 3rd one, and that's where, like you said, Jimmy Snuggerud comes in. What an impressive play. The awareness of recognizing that Buchnevich is going to be open there right in front of Blackwood. The effort shown, falling as he passes it on the backhand. Boy, was that a pretty play to put the Blues up 3-0.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous hockey, right? And kind of understanding the angles and knowing what he has to do to get that puck over to Buchnevich. And then, you know, obviously the pass is gorgeous in and of itself. And seeing Jimmy Snuggerud pulling off that pass, like, that just gets you excited already. And then Buchnevich just puts Blackwood in an absolute blender and goes, you know, back of the net, gorgeous. Like, it's just how this team is performing right now. That, like, nobody's missing a beat, and that's what you want to see, especially from a guy like Buchnevich, who we've talked about on this post game. Like, he's had his struggles even after the 4 Nations, right? And producing and finding the back of the net. And then he goes down with the injury, misses a couple of games, comes back, finds the score sheet, and finds the score sheet again tonight. And still, throughout the whole course of that ups and downs and roller coasters and every emotions that he's feeling, still finds the time to take Jimmy Snuggerud give him credit on the assist, and then pull him under his wing and provide him pointers. That's exactly what you want from this team.
And then we see Zach Bolduc put in his second one of the game. And this was the point where when Zach Bolduc got the puck on his stick, he wasn't open. There was traffic. It's not like this was a clear opportunity. No, this was a guy that was shooting with all of the confidence in the world. And that is what that second goal of the night for him and the fourth goal of the night for the Blues showed me. Would you agree with that, Thomas?
Yeah, it also showed me that this kid is a goal scorer, right? Which we kind of knew coming up in juniors and even in the AHL. Like, if he's going to produce at the NHL level, like, it's going to be finding the back of the net. But you don't score from that range in the NHL unless it's tipped, unless the goalie's screened, or if you've got a heck of a shot or release. And thankfully for Zachary Bolduc, maybe a couple of those happen, but I think it's definitely safe to say that he has an NHL shot that will play at this level, and finding the back of the net 2 times tonight. We're still waiting on his first NHL hat trick, but I don't think we're far off from seeing that either.
I will agree with you there, and I thought we were going to get it tonight, but it'll have to wait a little bit longer. Colorado able to put in a couple of goals before we head to the second intermission. A couple of perhaps ones that if the Blues ended up losing this one, we're looking at that one a little bit differently as far as those couple of goals that they gave up at the end of the second period. Leddy blows a tire on one, a pass that goes right through Ryan Suter's legs. So, but fortunately for the Blues, we don't have to really dive into the negatives of that tonight very much because they end up holding on. But things you're going to want to clean up for the playoffs, no doubt. Goals that good teams take advantage of. And tonight, Colorado took advantage of those. But the Blues end up weathering the storm for the large majority of the third period. They didn't really have a bunch of very good opportunities. Colorado most definitely leaned heavy in the shot total in the third period, but the Blues weathered the storm. Jordan Binnington was phenomenal, and then you get down to crunch time, and a couple of 2 or 6-on-5 goals for Colorado. And the chat's been talking about this a little bit tonight. What were your thoughts on this? Has been a challenge for St. Louis here in this recent stretch where teams are putting the heat on in 6-on-5, and the Blues have buckled a couple of times. Fortunately, they got the empty netter from Robert Thomas tonight that sealed the deal. But what are your overall thoughts about the play, the defense specifically against the 6-on-5 here in this recent stretch?
Well, I will actually say that in that second period, towards 5 minutes towards the end there, when they got their 2 goals, I think that was when I kind of felt the most nervous and the most pressure from the Avalanche. Obviously, the 6-on-5 is a lot of pressure, but you kind of prepare for those times as a coach and at practices, when they pull the goalie and just flipping pucks softly out of the zone and kind of getting guys back on the ice with legs under them, not necessarily shooting for the empty net every time, but kind of clearing the zone and living to see another day. But that last 5 minutes of the second period, I think, was a little bit dicey for me, but really I think it just stemmed from like the Blues' lack of possession there. Like, obviously you can say, the Colorado Avalanche have a brilliant offense and superstars. They're lined to the teeth with weapons and went out and got a lot of guys at the trade deadline to kind of gear up for a Stanley Cup run. But the Blues, from the offensive side there, they kind of lacked in possessing in their offensive zone and keeping the Avs on their defensive side of the ice. And so they were just hemmed in for the last 5 minutes, and it almost felt like, a constant onslaught. And in a 4-0 game, especially against a team like the Avalanche, they put 2 in the back of the net there in the last 5 minutes. Like, that gives them all the momentum going into the third. So I think, like you said, the Blues did a good job defensively of kind of coming out in the third period and stifling those chances. And then also, like you said, it was just making sure that they didn't tie the game once they pulled the goalie. And thankfully, with the help of an empty netter from Robert Thomas, they were able to do that.
Jobu commenting here. We appreciate Jobu making his way into the chat tonight.
Celebrity.
Jobu has had his hands full these past couple of weeks. His back is probably hurting a little bit because he is carrying this team. He is the glue that is holding together the St. Louis Blues. And Well, once again, Jobu, being Jobu, makes a great point that the Avalanche are one of the best teams at 6-on-5 in the league. So he says we can't feel too bad about that. He's being positive. I like that. It's a good point. They did mention that on the broadcast tonight. I think they said 11 6-on-5 goals going into that stretch, I think, tonight. So they're either at 12 or 13 now. So that is a very good point. But that's what you're going to be facing in the playoffs. Not specifically in Colorado, but teams that are going to be able to put up that kind of offensive pressure. So it's going to be important for the Blues to make sure that they're correcting on those issues and making sure that they're cleaning play up going into the playoffs. Listen, you're going to get plenty of practice against playoff-ready teams here these next couple. I guess it's, what are we at, a week and a half left in the season now? 4 games left. You're gonna face off against some tough teams. The next one being Winnipeg, and then you got I think Edmonton on the schedule still. So there's going to be some tests here, but most definitely tonight was a big one. The Blues, in large part, able to hold off the Colorado Avalanche for that 12th straight victory, Thomas.
I think it's also important to mention that if you're the Colorado Avalanche, right? I mean, essentially, with the results of today's games kind of taken into consideration too, not that they, knew them or were scoreboard watching, but you kind of understand like where you're lined up in terms of the playoff bracket and who you're going to be facing round 1. So in terms of, do or die hockey, I don't know that we saw an Avs team that was, just playing that level of intensity that we're at, where we know that every game is crucial. And, even a single loss at this point could potentially be the difference between you making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, or even, the difference of who your opponent is. And I think that the Blues had 20 blocked shots compared to the Avs 13, which is a little bit different than last game. The Avs had even less blocked shots. I think they had 8. But like I said, I don't think that they're playing the same level of do or die intensity hockey that we are right now. So I'm not sure that the comparison there in terms of NHL playoffs level hockey is, 1-to-1 in that regard. Sure. But that 6-on-5 at the end there is the best kind of sample size that we would get of that head-to-head level of intensity that we'll see in the playoffs. So kind of like we've been saying, and like Chad's been saying, like the fact that the Blues were still able to weather that storm bodes well for them down the stretch. And the fact that they're seeing this team multiple times now as we get closer to the end of the season. And the more looks that Jordan Binnington gets at a McCarr shot or a McKinnon shot, obviously Four Nations kind of helps that too when you're practicing with the guy. But the more eyes he can get on those shots, the better reads he can get moving forward, and the more saves that he'll make. So
that's a good point. Something I'll bring up as well is on the last post-game show on, what was that, Thursday, when the Blues tied the franchise record. Brandon Gallegos, who's made his Sports Hub debut, but he brought up a great point that right now the Blues have the target on their back. Everyone is talking about St. Louis. Everyone wants to be the team that ends this streak. So while I do agree that it is not at the caliber of what playoff hockey is, because you're playing for something even greater at that point, I do think that teams see St. Louis on the schedule, and I think that teams do want to be the ones to knock them off and perhaps you're playing with a little bit more juice as a result of that.
Yeah, I think so too. And we even saw, I think the Dallas Stars were on like a 7-game win streak today, and the Penguins popped it. So, and we had our troubles with the Penguins, and that's kind of what started this whole thing. Was we lost to the Penguins, and then we haven't lost since, including a game against the Penguins where they kind of threw everything at us. So, like you said, there is a target on our back, being the hottest team in the NHL, having the best player in the NHL and Robert Thomas since this stretch of Four Nations. But this team is showing us that they're capable of hanging with the big dogs, all of the big dogs that we've faced off recently. And like you said, we've got the Oilers coming up. We got the Winnipeg Jets coming up, who the Jets could be a potential first-round opponent. So it's good to get scouting on them kind of moving into the playoff season here quickly too. But yeah, they're showing us that they're capable of hanging with anyone and everything that gets thrown their way. And that's what you need in playoff hockey for sure.
Let's go ahead and let's take a look around the league tonight. Games going on. Obviously, we know the Blues 5-4 winners. Any other playoff implications or anything? Utah, a 4-1 win tonight over Winnipeg. So the Jets fall in this evening. Columbus falls by a final of 5-0. That doesn't really have much any impact on the Western Conference playoffs. But the LA Kings defeat the Edmonton Oilers 3-0 tonight. Let's take a look and see if there's anything else before I get to the biggest one. And I'm going to go ahead and get to it now. Oh, wait, here we go. The Canucks did win tonight 6-2 over the Anaheim Ducks. So they're hanging on by a thread. But the big one tonight, as far as playoff implications go, trying to scratch their way in, the Calgary Flames and the Vegas Golden Knights just getting started in Calgary tonight. That is a big one. I want to say that Calgary faces Vegas twice here to end the season. No doubt a challenge for Calgary down the stretch here, trying to, like I said, claw their way back in. But we'll just, if you're the Blues, the message has been the same the whole time. Keep winning games. Keep winning games. You control your own destiny. But that definitely is one that St. Louis Blues fans are going to wanting to be keeping an eye on tonight, Thomas, that Vegas Calgary game.
Yeah, and it does even, there is potential that the Blues and Calgary are the wild card teams and the Wild kind of fall out as they've been spiraling. So, kind of keep an eye on the Wild too. But obviously I don't want the Calgary Flames to catch us, but also at the same time, like I feel pretty confident that this Blues team keeps winning. Like they're going to find their way into a playoff spot one way or another, because like I said, the Wild are kind of struggling right now. But I'm going to go back in the chat to 914. Michael Bergstrom's at, how optimistic are you in the run the Blues can make in the playoffs? 12 in a row is crazy. First of all, I still can't get over the fact that we won 12 games in a row for the first time in franchise history for a team so historic like the St. Louis Blues that's been around for so long. Obviously took them 50 plus years to win a Stanley Cup, and now making history again 50 plus years down the road with a 12-game win streak. Just saying it out loud blows my mind. But how optimistic are you in the Blues run that they can make in the playoffs? I think also lies in who we play. And the more that I see kind of this whole thing unfold, the more I start shifting towards your side, Ethan, and kind of, I feel confident. Let me say this. I feel confident in anyone that the Blues will be playing in round one. And that means the Edmonton Oilers, it really does not matter. Like Vegas, Winnipeg, like the Kings, like obviously they're jostling for positions. It feels like Dallas and Colorado are kind of locked in, but it doesn't matter who the Blues play, because this team is on fire and any team is going to hate to play against them, right? That's a little callback to The Rock. I'm stoked for WrestleMania and Backlash. I'm going, actually. But that being said, Winnipeg or Vegas, I feel like we've been talking about it a little bit. Obviously, Winnipeg has Hellebuck in that matchup and that narrative from Four Nations and stemming this entire win streak. And now that Binnington versus Hellebuck will be awesome, right? That being said, this Vegas team is kind of banged up with Shea Theodore. It's kind of banged up with Alex Pietrangelo. I don't think they play as heavy of a style as the Winnipeg Jets. Also, the Winnipeg Jets are probably a little ticked off about 2019 because they had a very good team there that had high aspirations, and the Blues obviously clobbered them to go on to win a Stanley Cup. So that being said, I would love a chance to get into this Pacific-sided bracket and play some teams that we don't usually play in playoff series. You know what I mean? And a chance to kind of go up against the Edmonton Oilers, down the course of things, and have the offer sheet boys go head to head again in revenge style. There are still narratives on either side, but it does feel like, I don't know. If you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably say Winnipeg Jets again, because it really doesn't matter who the Blues play. But I do think this a potential matchup against Vegas. I also don't think that Aiden Hill is as talented of a goalie, obviously, as Connor Hellebuck, but he feels more like a mediocre, average level goalie. And the Vegas Golden Knights are good, and that's why he's good, as opposed to a guy like Jordan Binnington that kind of elevates the St. Louis Blues to another level, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. I feel like I am also at the point where I'm just about 50-50. The reality is that regardless of who you're going to play, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge. These are the best teams for a reason. But when I look overall, at the Pacific compared to the Central, I would much rather, just going off of the points, I would much rather end up in that Pacific side of the bracket than I would in the Central, because Winnipeg and Dallas there at the top, that is a mean machine that those two have going on. And that's a great point that you bring up about the physicality of Vegas with two of their top D-men banged up right now. Perhaps the Blues would be able to take advantage of that. So, they potentially for upcoming matchups, I like how the Blues compare against LA and Edmonton more than I do against Dallas and Colorado, even with the success that they have had against Colorado this season. I feel like personally I would much rather end up on the Pacific side. But I thought you also brought up a good point about where the Minnesota Wild are, who fell in last night's game against New York by a final of 3-1. So they now are 4 points behind the Blues. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Western Conference playoff race here. The Blues currently holding that top spot with 93 points in the wild card race. Minnesota a game at hand, but 4 points behind them. And then with 3 games at hand compared to the Blues, Calgary has 84 points and are playing tonight a .560 point percentage. The Blues are beyond clearing that. They're at .596 right now as we speak. So, it's going to be interesting down the stretch here, but I think at this point it's turned more into are the Flames able to squeeze out the Blues? Are the Wild able to hang on long enough to be able to make it into the playoffs? So, my condolences to Minnesota Wild fans, including Michael Bergstrom, who, you weren't on the post-game show the other night. Michael is my father-in-law, and he made an appearance in the chat the other day, and but he's up from Minnesota, and they've been hurting here recently. So my condolences to the Wild fans out there without Kirill the Thrill and Eriksson Ek. It's been tough for them. So, part of me hopes that they're able to just squeeze in, because that is still a really talented team. A lot of young guys that have a lot of potential, and they're going to be tough to deal with for a long time. But they are most definitely dealing with the injury bug right now. So it'll be interesting to see how things go down the stretch. Big game tonight on the playoff implications for Calgary and for Minnesota. If the Flames are able to win that, things get a lot more interesting. As we slowly begin to wrap up here, Thomas, history tonight, it's really easy to go back once again to that 2019 team and how good that team was. And while there are a lot of differences, obviously, when you look at roster construction, when you look at the level of talent, you look at what the expectation was for that season, I think that you have to, at least for a moment, regardless of all of that, stop and say what the Blues have done over this stretch is absolutely unbelievable. It deserves to be one of the biggest headlines right now in sports because of what they have done. I mean, especially in the National Hockey League, where every team is so talented, being able to do this for 12 consecutive games is something that is going to be remembered for a long time. And, I want to say that it won't be broken for a long time, but it was only a few years from the point that they broke it in 2019, regardless of what happens here in the final couple of games, regardless of what happens in the playoffs. This has been a phenomenal time to be a Blues fan, and it has been a phenomenal time for a Blues fan specifically, both because it's fun to win, but also because of the optimism that it has brought towards the future of the franchise for the next, 5, 6, 7 years. Completely, it feels like, has changed the direction that this team is heading.
Yeah, I mean, this win streak has been absolutely magical by every account, by every metric that you could look at. I mean, shoot, I came on a post-game show here after we lost to the Penguins, which was the last game we lost, by the way, and said, it's going to be tough for this team. They're going to have to go on like a St. Louis Cardinals-esque 2011 run. If they make the playoffs, I will shave my head, and I'm standing by that. And it looks like they're going to pull it off. But
look at it! But is it going to be beautiful?
But kind of like you said, like the parity that exists in the NHL with how different the Stanley Cup champions are, and how difficult it's been for the St. Louis Blues to not only put together a win streak, but even just to win like 3 games in a row this season. It took them until February 27th, that late in the season, before they strung together 3 wins. And now we're talking about creating history with a 12-game win streak. So, like I said, it's been magical. It's been a fantastic ride, and you're playing with house money right now. Like, I get chat. Everybody's talking about, hedge expectations. We don't want to talk about first-round opponents until we've made the playoffs, and I'm with you 100%. But also, it is fun to look ahead and kind of, speculate, get your hopes up about a Stanley Cup situation because of the rhetoric that was surrounding this team to start this season, which was hopefully, fingers crossed, we make the playoffs, but we're not expecting anything because we're rebuilding. So, like I said, we're playing with house money right now, and we're kind of a couple years ahead of where the rebuild realistically should be, and that's all credit to Doug Armstrong and what he's been able to do with this squad.
Let's go ahead and let's take a look at a couple of final comments before we wrap up here. Dr. Nobody, very happy for their win and the continued streak, but they cannot let that third period crap, I should say, happen again. A very good point there. A very good point there, Dr. Nobody. Want to make sure that things are being cleaned up at the end of games, but the Blues able to hold on long enough to get away with a victory tonight. And then let's see here. Ben commenting and saying, at this point, you get what you get in terms of a matchup. This team has faced all kinds of adversity. Also a great point. Regardless of who you face, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a fight. And this team hopefully has what it takes to make things interesting in the playoffs. And then the final comment here, Ace Rob, one of our favorites. Let's just hope Jobu heals Holloway real quick. Can we agree on that one there, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like this Jobu figure has become this year's Gloria. So, yes, please use your voodoo healing powers. If it means I got to donate a bottle of rum to you, I will absolutely make that happen. But bring Dylan Holloway back as soon as possible because he's an integral part of this team, and he's been on fire since Four Nations, just like the rest of this squad.
Just a quick reminder for you guys that the Blues Hub Postgame Show is sponsored by Hot Shots here on Sports Hub STL, which is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
The last comment that I'll throw up here from Brian Kinsey. By the way, the longest winning streak in NHL history is 17, dating back to the early 90s. We'll keep an eye on that. That's up next. We got 5 to go to get there. Looking ahead here at the Blues' upcoming schedule. Just 4 games to go, Thomas. They will face off. They'll head back out on the road Monday night, facing off against the Winnipeg Jets, a team they could potentially be facing off in the first round of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that one. And then next Wednesday, a late puck drop against the Edmonton Oilers, 9 o'clock. Another playoff caliber team will be interesting. Definitely tough tests the next couple of days. And then next Saturday on the road, finishing out their final road trip of the regular season against Seattle. Once again, a 9 o'clock puck drop. And then back at home for the final regular season game of the season at the Enterprise Center against the Utah Hockey Club. Thomas, final comments, final thoughts before we wrap.
Well, it sounds like these late start times are going to potentially be the death of me, especially if they win them. I'm just going to be up all night wired, not able to go to sleep. So it'll be exciting to watch them down the stretch. Like you said, the NHL win streak is 17, so hopefully they get as close as possible to making that happen and, providing more magic down the stretch. Let it happen, Jobu. We love you. Let's go. Let's go, Blues! God, I'm fired up, dude. This is insane.
He is Thomas Welch. I am Ethan Hannaford. This has been the Blues Hub Postgame Show. The Blues make history tonight, a 5-4 victory, their 12th straight in a row, setting a Blues franchise record. We will see you guys on Monday night following the game against the Winnipeg Jets. We appreciate you tuning in here on Sports Hub STL.